I have bought a whole lot of equipment in the 3 months since starting my media production company. But there's actually very few things that I would deem essential. And in today's video, we're gonna go over how much it costs to build an actual essential videography kit. I started working when I was 14 years old. And ever since then, my relationship with money has changed drastically. No longer was my net worth just however much money my mom told me I could spend, but rather a number on an app. And I did anything in my power to make sure that that number didn't get low. Honestly, anytime it did get lower, I got pretty anxious. So about 6 months ago, when I first thought about starting my own media production company, the only thing on my mind was how much money is it going to cost? How much money am I going to be investing into starting this company? And I couldn't find any resources anywhere. I was able to make my own list on what I thought was going to be essential and how much money it was going to cost and break it down that way. But there was no professionals that just straight up told you, this is what I bought, this is what I use, this is how much it costs. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Before we get into anything, I wanted to mention that there are going to be many different options in every single category that I'm going to give you today. But to keep this completely fair, I'm going to tell you exactly what I bought and how much it cost me. And if you want to use exactly what I did, go for it. But if you want to do something else, like a different camera body, different lenses, different lights, feel free. But I'm going to tell you exactly what I bought and for how much. If you have watched this channel at all in the last couple of months, you would know that I started with a Sony FX3. And recently I made the switch to the Lumix S5 IIX, and I couldn't have been happier with this change. The Lumix S5 IIX is an extremely capable full-frame camera. It takes amazing photos and arguably takes even better videos. And it only costs $1,800. The very next thing that I would definitely invest in is camera lenses. I went with the 16-28 and the 28-70 f2.8 Sigma lenses. Now, I do recommend that you start with zooms because versatility is really important when you're starting out with a pretty tight kit. The 16-28 plus the 28-70 gives me a 16-70 full frame field of view, all at a very shallow f2.8. These lenses both cost me $989. It seems really expensive to have spent $2,000 on lenses when I only spent $1,800 on the camera body, but you will very quickly learn, if you buy cheap lenses, that the camera is only as good as the lenses are. So I highly recommend you really do put the money forward and invest in really good lenses, especially because I bought the S5 IIX with these two lenses, and if I do upgrade the S5 IIX in the future, these lenses are still going to be perfect. On the topic of lenses, I think it is truly essential that we talk about one accessory that I do believe you will want to invest in, and that is ND filters. This is the case to the Freewell Magnetic Beat 2 3 to 7 stop ND filter, which is actually on the camera right now. This ND filter has a lot of benefits. One, it's magnetic, so it's super easy to take it on and off of my lenses. Two, if you want to be shooting at that f2.8, like you most likely will, having an ND filter allows you to keep the exposure in the background while getting good exposure in the foreground as well. If you ever plan on shooting outdoors, an ND filter is 100% worth the investment. This ND filter runs you about $150. If there's one thing to take away from anyone on YouTube, it's that audio is arguably more important to video than actual video. So I highly recommend that you really do invest in a really good mic system. You could get a shotgun mic, which will work for 85% of the stuff that you're gonna do, or you can get a wireless lab set. Costs a little bit more, but will work for 100% of what you are going to be doing. I highly recommend the DJI Mic 2s because they have a lavalier input, so you can put a mic on someone, or you could just hold these mics, and they're wireless, so you can be as far away from the camera as you want to be. They're really easy to hide, and their battery life is incredible. These mics are going to run you about $350. Okay. This is probably the one thing that you think you could cheap out on, but I don't recommend you do. and it is a tripod. Obviously, everybody knows a tripod. You probably are more familiar with the very, very cheap tripods that you could get off of Amazon that it feels like everybody had at some point in their life. But a tripod is most of the time the only thing that is keeping your camera away from the ground. So investing in a good heavy-duty one is super important because you're going to protect your gear and it looks more professional. This is the SmallRig AD01, and I do believe it is the greatest budget tripod that you can buy ever. Maybe. I don't think there's ever going to be something that it beats this out. This is $160. It's super solid. It actually has a really impressive fluid head on top. So I think you could buy this and be good for at least a couple of years. Now, the last thing that I do recommend you buy is a good light or two. I am using both of the lights that I use very often right now to light this scene, but I have an Aputure 200SX with the Aputure light dome on top of it, and then the Zhiyun CM25 25 watt little light that I use just for a rim light to keep this shot from being too contrasty. Both of these lights will run you a combined $350. The soft box is another $100, so you're looking at $450, but it's well worth the investment. The very last thing, and I know this is going to hurt, but I do recommend that you get a really capable laptop or desktop computer. I am a Mac user, and I do recommend you go with Mac because for creative work, there is nothing that tops the Mac system. This is the MacBook Pro M3 Pro chip. It handles 4K footage, photo editing, anything that I need it to very well. It does run you a pretty penny. A brand new MacBook Pro with this spec will probably run you about $2,200, but it is an investment that'll last you a pretty good while, and you want to be able to deliver and edit all the footage that you are filming. So that about wraps it up. It's about time to go over the total, but I do want to mention that, like I said before, this is all what I believe is a really well-rounded videography or media production kit. If you are specializing in any sort of videography or production, there are some changes. Say you only do weddings, I would recommend that you don't need the lights because more often than not, you're not going to be setting up lights to film a wedding. Same thing with running gun work. But what you would need is a gimbal, which you would then swap out the cost of the lights, but a gimbal and lights are roughly the same price. For general media production, content creation, interview setups, etc., you don't need a gimbal. That's why it's not included on this list. So here it is. The total for what I bought as my essential videography or media production kit comes down to $7,000, which sounds like a lot of money. But if you know anything about starting a business, there's going to be investments involved. And I do think that $7,000 is relatively on the low side for starting a business. I mentioned earlier that I'm making this video because I wish I had it 3 months ago. And I truly do mean that. I hope whoever is watching this is looking to do something like what I did and gets a little peace of mind knowing that this is how much someone in their shoes would spend if they could do it over again. I will admit I spent a little bit more because I bought a lot of things that weren't essential that I thought were essential. I still use them and they're great to have, but they don't lead to better videos. They just lead to more ease of use. On this list, I think everything that I told you leads to better production. And that's what truly matters. You can do it with just your iPhone. Know that. But if you want to be a professional in the media production world, these are the things that I would buy if I was first starting. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Feel free to check out my website, check out my media production, the work that we have done. Hit me up on there, comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you guys next week with more media production talk.